is Keyed In with Max and Brent, unlocking the minds of the industry's top real estate professionals. And now, here are your hosts, Max Rabin and Brent Jackson.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Keyed In podcast. I'm Max Rabin.
I am Brent Jackson.
Okay, in my life, I like to keep my friends close and my closest competitors on the podcast. So we have Andrew Riguzzi back on the show. Andrew Riguzzi is with Compass Real Estate here in Washington, D.C. Andrew has been on the show before. We had a great conversation. It's been a while, right?
It has. Yeah. Thank you guys for having me back. I really appreciate it. I know you guys probably have a chocked full schedule of great real estate agents. I mean, I listen to podcasts regularly, so I'm excited to be back on.
We're glad to have you. When were you? It was probably a year ago?
It's got to be
Over
like a year,
ago,
man.
right?
Maybe. Yeah.
Time goes by pretty quick.
It does go by fast.
Alarmingly so.
So, but one thing, okay, let's just go right to it though. One thing you said when we were getting ready was you wanted to come back on the show because you were listening to another show that we had with Fred Kendrick, who is one of the managers for TTR Sotheby's. And we were talking about like, who wants to deal with rentals? We were being very typical real estate agent, like, oh, rentals suck. It's like not a lot of money. It's, sometimes the transactions take longer than a sale transaction. But you're here to say that, hey, let's revisit that.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think that I may look at myself a little bit differently when I think about a real estate agent, right? When you guys think about real estate agents, you think about people that sell real estate. To me, I don't see it that way. I see it a little bit differently. I see it as I'm a person that has to do what's best for my client. And that may be a plethora of things, right? That could be selling. It could be renting. It could be all these different things that adds to our job. So it wasn't just Fred, it was a couple other people. We're just kind of like knocking on the rentals. And I wanted to come on and offer maybe a more balanced approach to the benefits of rentals and what that's done for my career and, how I've been able to help some of my clients through some rough patches.
So what, go right to it. Yeah. Tell us.
So because it's been a year ago, like let's revisit when I started in real estate. So I came here with nothing. I mean, my dad lent me his Accord that I drove here with, and I didn't have a network. My best friends were my aunt and my uncle, right? And they were obligated to be friends with me. I had like one other friend that was out here that I knew in high school that turns out she went to Georgetown and now she was too cool to hang out with me. So when I started in real estate, right, like I was like trying anything to get going. I had no money, and the phone calls that were coming in, the leads that I was getting were all over the place, right? And I was kind of brought up with like a yes mentality, right? So like when I was with my aunt and we were starting the business, she was like, look, you have to do everything that comes your way. And of course, being me, like I took that to the extreme. Like my aunt was like, hey, we're hiring somebody to retile the front. I'm like, nope, no, you're not. Like, I'll take that. Like, we need somebody to assemble the desks. I'm like, yep, that's me. Like, if it pays, I'll take it, right? And that's how it was when leads came in, right? Like somebody would come in, they'd be like, hey, so I'm interested in like a $900 studio in DuPont. And I'm like, yep, I'm your guy, right? And I would raise my hand and I would take care of it.
So the consumer's calling you or an agent saying, I have this and I don't want to deal with it?
Both, right? We were a very small agency. I mean, there was like 10, 12 agents. And they were getting things that were coming in. And we were getting like, people just randomly calling us, people like physically knocking on our door, being like, hey, I was in the neighborhood. I see this is a real estate company. Like, do you have any rentals? And I was just like, yeah, sure. I'll do all this. And a lot of times it didn't work out, right? They would find something on Craigslist or, find another avenue or cut me out of the deal. But, through being forced to get out there and like beat the streets, I got to know all these buildings.
Right.
So now all of a sudden I'm in these buildings doing these rentals, right? And because I wanted to be super prepared, right? I get there 20 minutes early, talk to like Shirley at the front desk and find out that There's 300 units in the building. 50 of them are rentals. The pool's located on the 12th floor. And that's how I started building my business.
Yeah.
And through that, like, it turned into sales eventually. Some of these people that you helped out, they had a friend that was also interested in maybe selling something. And that's kind of how I rolled into getting my start.
So remind our listeners, when did you start?
17 years ago.
17 years ago?
Yeah.
So fast forward 17 years, you're still doing that exact same approach?
Well, things kind of changed throughout the process. So first thing, as you guys know, like, as a real estate agent, it takes some time to fill your schedule, right? Time is a commodity that you have a lot of, especially when you're starting. So in the meantime, right, I was kind of building two paths. Well, I was building 9 paths. I was building anything that would pay me money. If somebody probably would have called me then and said, "Hey, do you do pest inspection?" I'd been like, "Yeah, let me buy some Raid. Like, I'll be at your house in 20 minutes."
Yeah.
Right? I just didn't know any better. So while I was kind of building this, quote unquote rental business, it was really just taking whatever came to me. And more rentals were coming to me. So as I was going through this, I actually ended up with a series of sales, all the catalyst of which was doing a rental in the Columbia building, which is 2425 L Street.
Mm-hmm.
And that led to 4 sales, like literally right in a row, like this unit, then this unit, then this unit, then this unit. And that then continued my business. But I never forgot that it was a rental lead.
Wait, was it from you? Did you have a rental listing in the building? So you were hanging around there and meeting others, homeowners in the building, or tell us?
So I was there. Some woman called me up and she said, "Look, I'm interested in renting this unit. I just bought it at the Columbia." And so I went and met with her and I did the research. I was like, "I don't know, this rents for, I'm making up $3,000. And she's like, "Okay, great. Like, that's not really enough. Could you run the numbers on a sale?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." I'm like, "I think it's going to sell for $700,000. She's like, "Oh, well, if I got $700,000, I'd sell it." I'm like, "Great. So let's do that."
Yeah.
So we ran parallel tracks, listed it for rent and for sale. It sold in the day. We got a great price. The next door neighbor, who had just closed the next day, was like, "Hey, did you guys, so you just, I mean, she closed on it, 2 weeks prior. She was going to rent it out, and then she ended up flipping it because there was enough sale there." And I was like,
Whoa.
"Yeah." So then we did it to that neighbor, and it was like 3 neighbors right in a row. And so then I ended up with like a really generous, pot of money after that. And I never forgot that. So then, again, as I started to become more successful, I said, and my schedule started to fill up a little bit more. And I let it fill up, way more to than what a normal person should allow. But, I was working a ton and I like to work. I'm a worker. And what I found, especially during those beginning years, when sales weren't always possible, it made a lot more sense to do a rental.
Mm-hmm.
I remember meeting somebody who had, I can't remember what the numbers were, but I think they bought their house for $700,000. It was worth only $600,000. Okay. And they were getting ready to sell it short. And when they were going to sell it short, what we found out during this process is that they had retirement, and the bank was going to wipe out their retirement to make up for the short sale.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like just about to, sign the papers and take the deal and wipe out their retirement. And I said to them, "Guys, why don't we rent this instead?" And they were like, "Well, we just want to be done with it." I'm like, "Okay, let me show you the numbers." Right? The numbers say that you're going to lose $300 a month. I'm like, "Well, that's terrible." I'm like, "Well, you're about to lose $100,000 today."
Yeah.
So if you were to rent this for the next 3 years, right, and lose some money along the way, then at the end of that period, maybe the tide rises and you get back to becoming, either break even or you start making some money. And as we know, like the market is very robust in DC. And this $100,000 loss ended up with a $25,000 gain at the end. And these people were like, they thought I was a genius, right? I got lucky.
But how did they not see that on their own though? They were just sort of caught up in this like cycle.
Yeah, because every other real estate agent that they met with was just like sell.
Yeah,
Of course you're going to sell, right? And to me, I was trying to think of how would I want somebody to treat me if I was sitting there? And what I like to know whenever I make decisions is I want to know all the angles, right? Tell me every which way to approach this, and then I'll try to sort out what the best way to solve it was. And that's what I wanted to bring to my clients.
That's interesting now. Like it's a totally different market than 2008, 2009. Some of the sandboxes that we're playing in now, it's the complete opposite, where because the financing institutions have changed, we had to put 20% plus down on a property. Rates, 2-3%. Some of the sellers aren't getting their numbers now. So it's that exact same conversation. It's not a short sell, but it's like, if your note is $2,500 a month, you can't get $800,000. Why not just rent it for $4,000 a month? And we've seen a lot of people pivot from trying to sell to go to rent. So it's forced us as agents to become rental agents, even if we don't want to.
Yeah, and so yes, it's forced you to become that. But to me, that's just being a real estate agent, right? It's just like I need
helping
to be.
Your clients.
I'm not just an expert in sales, right? I'm an expert in everything real estate. Or I would like to become an expert in everything real estate related, and that's anywhere from how to fix a toilet to what's the best air conditioner to put in to what improvements should you make or how to navigate the rental world. And again, offering that balanced approach to your clients. Say, hey, look, what do you want to do here?
Right.
But you're right. The market for rentals has changed vastly in DC over those 18 years.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think that it's important to segue into you have a property management business as well as your sales business, and I think that's a really great way to add value to this rental aspect of your real estate agency.
Yep.
Because if you are just if you're a point of rental or point of sale person, you're going to get paid on the commission for either one. And that's the whole thing we talk about with the rental commission. The money is so short. It's not great. But if you can if you're taking that management fee every month, it's not a totally passive income stream, correct, but it's more passive. It's a lot more passive than the sales side, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
And when we built the management company,
can you tell us about you built it? So
built the management company is that's a joke that I actually said that. We didn't build it. I happened into it. Okay.
Right.
And how did I happen into it? Right. Somebody on Facebook said do you know any management companies that will manage my property?
And you're like, I'll do it.
And I looked at it. I'm like, how hard could this be? Right. Just my ideas of being a grandiose version of myself. Of course we could do this, right? So I figured out what it was to become a property manager, and I figured out what to charge, right? Because I had no idea. And then we started with one property.
So what does that mean? You have to take a class?
So as a real estate agent, you don't need to maintain a separate license. Now we do have separate licenses, because we have separate property managers, and it's kind of complicated. But Compass doesn't want any piece of the property management company, so I have to maintain a separate license for that. But yeah, as a real estate agent, you can do property management.
That's something. It's important to mention that about how Compass doesn't want any part of that. I think that's pretty common for all of the brokerages, because there's a liability aspect to obviously tenancy. And there are some ins and outs of the whole rental world that companies don't want a part of.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So because of that, and at the time when I was with my aunt's brokerage, it was real small, right? And she didn't care. she was happy for us to run everything through there.
Mhm.
But then as the business grew, then we had to create its own entity. So
What's that entity called?
it's a very, very creative name. It's called Property DC Management.
Yeah. Keep it so simple.
It's a real ringer, right?
But okay, so
It's got its own logo.
all right, so let's use an extremely buzzy, popular term, side hustle. I know it's not a side hustle. It's like this property management is a real career, obviously.
Yep.
And I know it's not. I'm not saying it's your only career. I'm just saying your career is a holistic real estate
Mhm.
agent. I've got
Mhm.
that. So tell us a little bit about how to set that business up. Okay, like in terms of like licensure, and I'm sure it's like an LLC, and then how you hire and what you're looking for. Tell us some more about that.
So when I started, and we used to just run everything. It was myself and my sister, who I'd hired. It's a brilliant idea to be my assistant. And we just worked it together, right? I would do all the showings, right? Because those were contacts, those were people that I could potentially make inroads with, show them that I was a good guy, I was a smart real estate agent, and maybe they'd call me for another reason. So I was doing all the showings, and then she was handling all the management of things. And when we started, we went from like, I don't know, 1 property to 16 properties. It's a lot.
That's a lot.
And then as we kind of grew and grew and grew, we need to put together processes, right? It wasn't just all the information in my head. But then when we transitioned to Compass, then I needed a whole separate thing, right? At the very basic, you need an LLC and you need to maintain a separate license, which is fairly straightforward to get that set up. I also upped my insurance coverage.
Yeah, I was going to say insurance for sure.
But that was, just kind of like an extra liability. And then from there, as we started to grow, I realized that, my sister and I couldn't handle this business together. So now I had to bring in somebody else. So I, went and found a property manager on, I don't know, LinkedIn or something like that. And, of course, when I hired the first guy, I made the wrong decision because I just needed somebody quick. And then I literally burned that guy out. Like we were bringing on properties, 1 a month, 2 a month. The business was growing rapidly because I don't know if you guys have met other property managers in DC, but it's a business that's in need of some overhaul.
Yeah, we talked about that before.
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, it's frightening. I mean, nobody showed, like, I still show up to our, to like a interview for property management. And like, I show up dressed well, on time, prepared. Like, I don't think other property managers
I could
do
never
that.
imagine that, right?
Yeah, like just presenting in an appropriate way. I mean, if somebody's going to trust me with their most expensive asset to maintain, like, that deserves some prep.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why the business grew, I think, because I was trying to bring the same level of service and professionalism to the rental side that we were doing to the sales side.
I was thinking also in terms of working with your clients who we're talking about, clients who may have a property that it's not going to sell in this market, or they just want to hold it for longer. They don't want to hire another person. They would rather work with you anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're keeping them in front of you. And believe me, I've lost sales business from saying like, listen, I don't handle the property management. I think, I can recommend someone, and it's like I either recommended the wrong person or they found someone else who then like,
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So that's why it's hard to say no to these kinds of situations, but you just took it all the way to that level.
I did, but it's also cost me clients because sometimes you bring somebody in and it doesn't go according to plan.
Sure.
And look, I've made mistakes. Maybe it was they had a bad experience through a bad tenant. Maybe they weren't happy with the process, whatever it was, and I've lost business from it.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, I've won more than I've lost, and I've learned a lot of lessons, right? And that's kind of what we bring to this. It's like, look, I've been through this so many times, and we know all the problems that come up. We know the deficiencies in the marketplace. We know the deficiencies with tenants, and we're able to kind of put it together and make it all work.
Mm-hmm.
And now, right, I have a full-time property manager. We have 75 properties that we manage, and we take in, it's about $250,000 a month in rent.
Yeah.
So it's a real business, and it is the biggest growth sector of our business because there's just not a lot of professional people.
That's what I'm guessing is like, it's like once they get a taste of the clientele, once they get a taste of someone who can actually do something efficiently with minimal headache and the personality that they were hoping for, they're happy to hire you.
Yeah. Those headaches still come up.
Of course, it's property
it's
management.
property management, right? It's the trend that I'm seeing in the marketplace, and look, it's everybody under the age of, I don't know, 45 years old has zero idea of how to maintain a property. Like the phone calls that I get are like, "Hey, we just put in a maintenance request because our light bulb's out." Well, that's not us. Like, I tried to replace the light bulb, I failed. So can you please come over? And I'm like, first thing, how did you fail? Like, can you just walk me through this? Can you give me a point by point?
Right.
Right? Did you go righty tighty instead of lefty loosey? Right? Like, what's going on here? And it's amazing to me, like, when we were kids, my dad could fix and do everything, right? They put an addition on their house, and my dad like refused to pay the guy who put up the siding, so he did it himself, right? Like my dad's 77. He's gonna be 71 this year. Their bathroom is from like 1992, and my dad's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna retile it." I'm like, "Why, Dad? Like, you're retired, you're successful, like you can pay somebody to do it." He's like, "But why would I do that?" That generation's gonna die, and the generation that's coming back behind it has no idea how to fix or how to do anything.
It's very true.
Right? And it's especially in this city, right? Where we've got a lot of smart people, we've got a lot of attorneys, but if you give them a leaky toilet, like they're befuddled.
Why do you think all the new construction is so minimal?
Right?
Like, there's nothing complicated in there. It's like the toilet that barely even flushes. It's like everything's low flow. Like it has to be the most easy to repair or replace item. You know?
Right. It like has to be made with Legos, right? It's just like one piece comes in and comes out.
But to that point, I also think you've got to provide that high level of service, because these, I don't know what millennial, whatever they are, Gen Z. But it's like, if you don't provide that, they'll go to you pick a building in the city that provides that service where they have a portal and they'll come up and change your light bulb or take out your trash or walk your dog.
Sure. And right, for every shoe, there's a foot that fits it, right? But what we're seeing is that people treat these 100-year-old houses as if they're supposed to be like brand new.
Right.
Like somebody called me, they're like, "Hey, the windows are drafty." I'm like, "Yeah, windows.
No kidding.
That's a fact, right? Windows are drafty."
That's an interesting point. So you have 75 units under management. Are you getting the calls from the 75? Or are they directed to your full-time property manager first and then to you? Like, I mean, I would think you're higher up to where you're not getting my toilet stopped up at like 9 p.m. at night.
So a couple things. So when now we have a management software, right, where somebody writes in the portal, like, "Here's the problem." Okay. And for me, the way we run the business is that I communicate with the owners, and my property manager communicates with the tenants. Okay. That they're really separate groups. They need to be spoken to differently. They need to be handled differently, all that stuff, right? One are our clients, one that we have to service. Okay. So I handle that. But these tenants can become very entitled and be very rude and very harsh. And I watch this like back and forth on the portal, and like my property manager is just like getting beat up by these people. So sometimes I'll have to step in because I have mechanical knowledge, right? As you guys know, like going through 50 real estate transactions a year, right? You have some knowledge of how things break, how they work, how to fix them. So I'll have to step in with some of that more expertise from time to time. Or when a tenant is becoming abusive to the property manager, which is sadly not an uncommon thing. So it is streamlined that way, but I'm always watching it in the background.
Right.
But also, if a request comes in that says like, "I've got a flood at my house and my property manager, Jen, can't get there," like, good old Andrew's throwing his toolbox in the back of the car and driving out there.
Yeah, you're going.
I'm going, and like, do I need to go? Probably not. But I need to be able to look my owner in the eyes and say, "Look, I did everything I could." right? And like I've had people like, run into a house where the washer dryer was on the 3rd floor and was leaking and it was raining in the basement. And it's like running into battle. Like you're running in the door, you're like, where is it?
Yeah.
show me to your problem, right? With my flashlight on and like my sneakers and right? Trying to figure it out. I'm the first man called.
But this is like, if you're at 75 units managed, that's a lot of units. I mean, I know some are higher maintenance than others, tenants and properties.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's a limit to this for you, or could you see yourself like growing this to a larger portion of your business and hiring more managers?
So I think so. I mean, it's the biggest growth sector of our business without trying, right? Me currently coming on here is the most I've ever done to even speak about property management.
Sure.
We haven't marketed to agents who, where we say, look, give us your rentals. There's no good place to give them to you. We'll give them back. We'll pay referrals, right? So if I wanted to ramp this up, I think we could. I think right now I'm in a process where I really want to write a operator's manual for this business, right? So that if it is time to bring on another person, I can hand them this manual and say, hey, here it is. Here's how you pay people. Here's how you do this. Here's how this works. But we're just not at that place right now. It's in the plans. But I also, I have a lot of plans and I just had a child. So
Congratulations.
Thank you. So it's trying to balance out, when do we have the time for that? But if I in a vacuum, if I could look at the real estate sales, which is great and we do very well there and it's growing, right? But the property management is on an exponential growth curve.
Sure.
If I could give it the time.
It seems eminent that it would grow your business, and so you brought up an interesting point. So there's a question. I think that we had a client who, through Jonathan Taylor, known each other in the same neighborhood for many years, and you had helped them manage their property as a rental.
Mm-hmm.
But then they came back to us, and because they wanted us to help them lease it, but then they went back to you for the management.
Yep.
And so, of course, our concern is like, well, when they eventually do sell that house, it's probably a $4 million house.
At least.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we're thinking like, well, now Andrew's in the mix and it's right. And
true,
and you're doing great things for them every day. Whereas
sure.
we got one moment of niceness. Right. So talk about that. So it's like, if I come to you and say, I've got someone who wants to get their house managed and they've asked me to lease it for them. I don't want to handle the management of it, or I can't, or whatever. And if I want to bring it to you, like, how is there a soft landing there, or is it going to be like, well, now they're in Riguzzi's world?
Yeah, right.
That's a great question.
Right.
So we've had through my time of doing this, we've had a bunch of things play out. So, for example, if you bring us the transaction, we will always return it back to you. Now, I've been in a situation where somebody said to me, that guy Max, he's a great guy, but now I got to know you and now you're my guy. So in that scenario, to me, I said, look, I understand that's what the client wants, but if the agent knew that this was going to be the conclusion, they would have never brought me the deal. So in that scenario, we actually conducted the transaction and I paid an 80% referral fee back to that person. Because that was
fairly honorable.
Well, that was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Right. If I didn't, that person would say, would if I were them, I'd say, look, Andrew's stealing clients over here.
Riguzzi's going to be burned to the ground.
Exactly.
Yes.
And as you know, small community, right? And I want to do what's there's enough business out there for everybody, and kindness gets returned. And to me, that was just the right thing to do. Now, we didn't necessarily tell the client that. They didn't need to know.
They don't even know, right?
But it is, I will say, what's difficult is that it's very difficult to have another agent do the rental side and then have us come in and take over the management.
Right.
Because it's, you could have promised them a whole bunch of things, right? You said, oh, somebody's going to come and mow your lawn and the property managers are going to, give you back massages every day. And then I come in there and they're like, what happened? This is Friday. It's back massage day.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I was Max. I don't know what he said.
Yeah.
Here's what we do. So, but we've streamlined that process too. And, we're happy to take on referrals. But I have that same conversation with agents. Like Andy Pierce is a super great guy, and we had like a series of conversations where he was like seriously, you're going to return these clients to me? And I'm like, look me in the eyes. I'll write it down on paper and send it off to you that we'll return these people to you. Like to me, that's just what's right.
What does your fee structure look like as far as if you're bringing in the application or the renter from start to finish versus like just management?
So if we just do the rental, and that means we, do the advertising, screen the people, we write the lease, we negotiate the lease, we get it signed. That's 1 month's rent.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you want us to maintain the relationship going forward, it's 8% per month.
Right. It's pretty standard rate right now. Yeah.
Yeah, it fluctuates. It's all the way up to 12, depending on it. We've stayed at 8. We've never raised our fees because rents rise, right?
Sure.
So, so that's how we've worked it. We're now realizing that if we're taking a transaction, like for example, if you brought us a renter, you said, look, I already rented this up, here, just take the management. It's becoming more and more difficult to do that because of those communication issues. And there's so many problems in the first 2 months that a tenant enters a property. There's like a lot of trauma on the house. Like, somebody moved out, somebody moved in, they don't know how to work things, they break things or whatever. So we're now actually charging a startup fee to the owners too in those scenarios because it's just so much more work to get them set up.
Mm-hmm.
And then your geographical area, you have 75 units. Is there a geographical area that you focus on, or is it like all over the DMV?
Just DC. We handle one house or one condo in Virginia, and we had one in Bethesda. We had one in Arlington too, which ended spectacularly terribly. But yeah, my process is that I want to have a location in which I can get to everything in 20 minutes. And if I can't get to 20 minutes, then maybe we shouldn't be doing it. Either myself or my property manager.
I feel you on that.
So you're not in Southeast?
We do some in Southeast, but there's just not a ton. Yeah. And I recently went to go interview for some, and I looked at where they were, and I said, guys, I'd love to come in and take this down, but I said, this is just not the right fit for us.
Right. You have a preference over houses versus condos?
Condos are much easier,
Totally.
but they turn over more frequently. And you would think I would be excited because every time it turns over, right?
There's
like
an
we make more money.
Yeah.
But it's not good for the owner. And after 3 turnovers, the people maybe we want to sell this instead.
Yeah.
So to me, the best scenario for long-term rentals are, number one, is to stay just under market rent. So if market rent's $3,000 and we rent it for $2,800 or $2,900, the tenant feels like they're getting a deal and they're going to stay longer.
Yeah.
Right?
Every time you increase the rent, it's based on the original basis. So you should be lagging a little bit behind market rent. And that's just a side story to this. When my sister first moved to Venice Beach, okay, she was renting, this is a long time ago, but she was renting this place and it was cheap, right? In air quotes. And I was like, yeah, it's a great place, but the market there is going like gangbusters. If you would just buy something, this is again a while ago when you could actually buy something in Venice Beach.
Right.
And she stayed in that rental for a long time. And I'm like, because the rent was always just cheap enough.
Cheap enough, right?
Just cheap enough.
And for a landlord to do well, it's not about max rent. It's about max occupancy.
Totally.
Right? Because every time I have to come in there and I have to paint it and I have to turn it over, like your money just evaporates, right? It just migrates from the client's pocket to mine or to the painter's pocket or, maintaining the property. So if you can keep a tenant in there long term, right, then you're much better off. Like I tell my clients, every time you have to hear from me, it's expensive, right? So the less you hear from me, the better.
No doubt.
Do you have a minimum threshold? Like you're not going to take a studio for $1,000 or you're whatever?
No, because I'm a sucker, right? I can't. When people have studios to rent, like they usually come to you like hat in hand, like, hey, can you help me? Like I need help. And we could charge them any amount of money, but like I just see that person, I'm just like, yeah, sure. Like what I hope is that, every time we do a baby rental right? We then get a big rental that
Counterbalance.
Yeah.
There's pieces to the whole.
Yeah.
It's like in any business. It's like you're going to put out, especially if you're managing a large amount of units, you're going to put out a certain amount of work no matter what. And some things are going to have higher return than others, and it all comes into the pot. That's it.
Yeah, and like I wish I could say that I just managed $4 million homes, but that's not really a business model. But the funny thing is, like I have problems with these rentals, and I tell like my friends, or it's especially my wife who's on me about it, and I'm like, hey, I tell her this problem that I had, and she's like, how much money do you make on this? I'm like, I don't know, like we make $100 a month, and she's like, can I get my checkbook? Like, can I get my checkbook so I never have to hear about this again?
That's funny.
I don't know. Maybe like I think you and I think alike about those kinds of things. Though it's like when I think about like a couple $100 a month, I'm not thinking about just a couple $100 a month. I think about it like in terms of long period of time, and I think about multiple couple hundreds of bucks on all the other different things that I do.
Sure.
And that's what adds up to affording everything.
Everything, yeah. And on top of it, like what I hope is that, I have a saying that's like, be nice to everybody because be nice to everybody because they may have rich friends, right? Which is appropriate for real estate, right? Which was derived from another saying from another buddy that was, be nice to everybody because they may have attractive friends. But he had a different end goal than I did.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, it's just like, look, let me put it all out there and be good to everybody, and hopefully as an overall business it comes back.
So once you get the listing signed up, is it just like a regular realtor? You're putting in MLS, photos, video, whatever you're doing, or is there like another process that you're doing?
Yeah, so we don't put everything in MLS because, as you know, most things trade on Zillow for rentals. I mean, it's a very segmented market, which makes it very difficult for the consumer, right? Apartments.com has different listings that Zillow doesn't. MLS has less listings than Zillow. So, we stay with mostly Zillow, but there are some times where we have a house that's specific. $10,000 house, like chances are that person's got a real estate agent. So it just kind of depends. But we'll do the same things. I mean, we'll do the professional photos, we do 3D tours, we do the floor plan. Again, because our goal is that, that we get to reuse that material on a yearly basis.
Right. Yeah, you have the collateral, so it's just plug and play.
Yeah. But yeah, the process is the same. There's the interesting thing now is that, it used to be when we rent things back in the day, right? 15 years ago, there were no big apartment buildings, right? So when you rented something, you set up the open house for 1:00, and at 12:30, people started to form a line. And those people would try to, influence me to choose them. Like they'd show up with checks in hands, applications ready to go. Like it wasn't uncommon for somebody to show up like with a bottle of wine for me. Like one guy actually put a rubber band around the application and his checks on a bottle of champagne and gave it to me.
Interesting.
Right? I mean, it was like for a $1,500 rental in DuPont, right? Like that,
Okay.
and there was like 30 other people behind him. But now, because there's so many options,
Right.
like I have people that are like, "Oh, this is my second viewing of a rental," and I'm like, "Oh gosh," I'm like, "All right, well, we're gonna have to do this song and dance again." And while the property manager handles a majority of them, right? Because she sometimes gets too full, I'll do these rental showings. And I'll go in there and I'll do like my tap dance. I'm like, oh, you get coffee over there, go over here.
Yeah.
And, is it something I need to do? Probably not. But the people are really, really thankful when you come to anything with a professional approach, right? Whether
True.
you're a plumber, an electrician, a pest control guy, or, the rental guy, right? And I show up on time, dressed well, ready to go and sparkle and like, give me.
You're not expecting that.
Right. Yeah.
If we flip the script, so I mean, yes, you might get some of these 75 units that sell. You're going to put more in your database, but you also have 75 renters that might be buyers. Are you putting them in your database and following up with them to, hey, you're paying $3,000 a month for a 1-bedroom. Something just popped up on Church Street for $500,000. Let's go take a look at it.
We try to, but you have to think like the property managers are the bad guy, right? So, they say come to my house and change my light bulb, but I'm saying if it's an electrical issue, I will pay for it. But if it's not, I have to charge you.
And they're like, I hate you.
Exactly. They're like, you're the worst person I know, right? I mean, some of them, like some of them have moved out that we've become friends with. We're starting to farm that group a little more. But again, it's a delicate balance because I don't want to work against the interest of my clients.
Yeah.
But people, this is not New York. People are not renters for forever. So we also try to, like for example, my holiday gifts go out to all my owners and all my tenants, right? That's a twofold approach, right? Number one, am I trying to farm them for future business? Yes. But also, like, a happier tenant is way easier to manage than somebody who's upset.
For sure.
And like we get in these back and forths with these tenants where like they're really upset that something's happening or something's going wrong and it's not getting solved quick enough. And the one thing that I say to him that usually calms him down is I'm like, look, nobody wants this solved faster than me. Like, you think I want to be talking to you about like why your toilet only flushes half the time? Like, it's not in my best interest and it's not in yours. Like, I don't want to be here. You don't want me to be here. So trust me, we're aligned on getting this fixed as soon as possible.
We're with Andrew Riguzzi, jack of all real estate trades. So we're talking about your management business. What about your investment stuff? Like, last time you were with us, you told us about a very interesting investment property that you have. Was like an art studios.
Sure. Yeah. So it's it was a building that was built in the 80s as a motel, and then we converted it to artist workspace, which is in dire need in the district.
Yep.
So we have, again, because I like real estate and I've used it in diverse purposes, right? I've used that platform and that knowledge to then do other things, like property management would be one of them. We do some development work, buy and hold, house flips, condo conversions. So it's kind of all across the board. And then there's like my whacked out investments that are even like just more strange and alternative.
Tell us about your development business right now. Then, what's going on? Like, what are you into right now? Have certain things dried up and other things popped up? What's the ebb and flow?
Well, this is going to be the shortest segment of this conversation. There's nothing. Like there is. It's very difficult to find a deal that makes sense. It's with additional costs on top of it, to find before, when the market was up and down all over the place, you could find a property that made sense. Now, because the market's so tight, you really need somebody who's doing something as their full-time job, just finding properties. And I don't have the bandwidth to do that, and I don't have necessarily the desire to build up that development business.
Sure.
So right now, what I'm using my development knowledge is to find, if I come across a home, be able to bring that to a developer and say, hey, because as a developer, I was an inefficient developer, right? I only did one project a year, 2 projects a year. There's a lot of other developers that can be much more efficient. So I bring it to them and say, hey, look, here's where you can acquire it at. Here's the work you need to do, and here's what you can sell it at. And because I have knowledge of construction costs and, I know how the development process works, I can pitch it to them in a way that they can understand, and I don't think other real estate agents are doing.
Well, I'd say that I hear you on that, and a lot of the developers that I work with, and Brent works with as well, have echoed the same thing, that it's really hard to make sense out of a lot of deals that come across your desk. But yeah, I mean, for me, like, people always ask me that. They're like, well, that one, if you see that and you see what the ARV is supposed to be, then why aren't you like working on something like that yourself? It's like, because I don't have the efficiency of scale, and it's just, these guys are doing this all the time, and they can't make sense out of it. Then what the hell am I doing?
Yeah, and so on top of that, right, the deals that are easy to do are getting snatched up and getting done really well, right? The deals that come across that I am actually engaging in are things that are usually so messed up that nobody else wants to touch it, right? It's like this thing is so gnarly, like we don't even know what to do with this. So, and then that comes my way, and I'm like, oh, well, maybe if I really pick this apart, right, and spent a lot of time, peeling back the layers of the onion, I can get to a place where this is really interesting. Like currently, with a partner, I'm looking at some office to residential conversions, right?
In
From
DC,
outside of DC.
outside.
Yeah. Still within the Beltway, but it's still very difficult. It's a very difficult project to put together because there are so many factors and unknowns and stuff like that.
The deals right now are tough. I know anything that comes across our desk, if we send it to any developer that we know, someone else has already sent it to them, and these are off-market deals. So to your point, it's almost like trying to find that difficult one that's in the MLS, or maybe it's just out there hanging, but they just haven't looked at it the right way. To reposition it on a busy street or whatnot to a less busy street, things like that, just to kind of pick apart the deal.
Yeah, I mean, like right now, there's two pieces of development, two types of deals that come across my desk that I'm able to do, or I'm interested in doing because nobody else wants to do them. And one of them is artist workspace, right? Because I know that model, I know how it works, I know what the demand is like. And the second thing is alley lots, right? I lived in an alley lot.
Right.
I developed this 3-townhouse community, not community. It's a grandiose term. Yeah, 3 townhouses in an alley in Columbia Heights. So those things I now understand. And when I mean I understand them, I mean my business partner really knows how to do them. I just know that I should latch onto that and bring it in and bring him in on it.
Right. Yeah, those are interesting, the alley dwellings. There's one in Capitol Hill that's on the market now, Kings Court.
Yeah, that's a very sore spot for me because we had a bid $1 million more than they ended up accepting.
On that
What?
particular lot?
Yep. So that was oddly enough, that was both things. There is an artist workspace that's there, and there are these alley lots, and they were selling them as a group. They came to us. I was like, oh my gosh,
Like, this is it.
Project
This
was
is
made for
yeah,
me. I can't
yeah.
wait to jump into this. But turns out they got down the path with one developer who offered them, I'm making up the numbers, $3 million, and our offer was $2 million. And then as these developers got through their due diligence, they're like, guys, this is only worth $1 million to us. And because they were so far down the path, the guys just kind of threw up their hands and said, oh, we'll just take $1 million.
Because they own the artist studios across the way there too. Interesting. I didn't know you were part of that.
I tried to be, yeah. And now it's a great project in an alley with artists workspace. And we were thinking of doubling that artist workspace. Taking down that building and doubling the size of it, because I think it's something that's needed, something that I'm interested in, and it's something that we have a model where it works.
So let me ask you really quickly then, for the artist workspace model, is there other money? Is there another money source for that? Is there, or is it you're really just doing that and just because you understand how it works?
I understand that there's a demand there, and these artists will go to just about any location, and nobody wants to deal with artists, right? They're not the best business people, right? They're creatives, so we're not like harnessing city money or making a nonprofit. It's just I understand what the artists want. We understand what locations they'll go in and the size of the units in which they'll take.
Okay.
But if you go anywhere and you try to take away artist workspace, that's a big no-no to the city because they really want more of that. It's part of one of their directives.
Is there not city money for that?
There is. It just I found I can go at the straight bank route and do just as well.
And then control the deal, start to finish yourself.
Yeah, but besides that, there's been no other developments to be had.
Real quick, I want to go back on the rental component. Do you have an end game with that? Like you want to sell it to some conglomerate or acquire somebody, or what's the end game with?
I don't know. The truth is, I'm going to continue to work at it. I think we may start rolling out some more formal advertising and see if that does anything. But right now, I think it's a solid business and we're at a good scale. But yeah, I think that I could see that business, potentially doubling if we brought in a new manager and I really went on like a road show, right? Showed up at brokerages, told them this is what we do, really advertised to the aging community. But I don't think we're quite ready to do that. But that would be the next step for us.
Any other questions? Anything else you wanted to go over?
No. I know you had on there that you wanted to talk about any nightmare scenarios.
I think that we had. I actually think the property management, the that was like a long form thing. It was kind of a nice ad for your business. But I think that's there's a lot of value in that conversation.
I'm interested. Like, I'm thinking that's something that we've always talked about as a group. It's like Peter Lander and the team used to have a property management component, and then I think it just got too busy for him, and then he sold off a lot of his units. But I've always been interested, like the whole thought process, right? Because you're passing off deals because we don't want to deal with it. But it's like over the years, I mean, I think we probably have like 10 or 15 rental units right now. Like, we had those under management, and you're tacking on 15 a year. I mean, you can do the math. I mean, it's a pretty penny.
It can be. It's very painful in the beginning until you get to a place where you can actually like have true software to management and bring in somebody else, right? I mean, property managers are not inexpensive. So she could, the property manager we currently have, like, she could manage 30 properties, 70 properties, or 100, as long as we set her up appropriately. So, but then, once you get to 100, you got to do something.
Did you have to create the software yourself, or is that something you guys?
No, it was like a Salesforce base that we took over. What we're writing right now is again the manual.
But I think, like, and I mean, no foreshadowing or anything. I think that the reason that a lot of the brokers wanted to step away from the property manager was because of the liability aspect, and also some of the characters that are involved in property management. Yeah, there's been some nightmare stories on, from either something happening with tenants going the wrong way or with the managers themselves going AWOL.
Yeah, and there's more downside risk than there is upside risk for the brokerage, right? So your brokerage takes a rake. If it's $1 million sale, okay, they're realizing that the rake that they take on that is enough to cover, some of the risk. But when you're talking about a $3,000 rental and they're taking a 20% rake from that, like, there's just nothing there to protect them.
Tell me about it.
Right. And I've been in a handful of situations where it's like, it's unbelievable what some of these tenants have done and owners that have really, like, they just kind of flipped out. I mean, I had a one owner that we managed their property, and we had to paint it for the next tenant, and it was $900 to paint it. My property manager reached out to them, said, "Okay, great. Is this okay to spend?" We had the ability to spend up to $500 without her authorization. Anything over that, we had to check with her. So we said, "Okay, look, we need to paint it. It's going to be $900." The property manager reaches out to her, gets a verbal yes, we do the work. She gets the bill and she says, "I did not authorize this. I'm not paying for this." And I said, "Look, in the sheet it says that, Tom, the property manager, reached out to you on the 2nd of March and he got to you okay." I said, "He did not." That issue got so tumultuous, the owner of that property filed a Better Business Bureau complaint against me.
Jeez.
She was an attorney, so she attempted to sue me. And when we worked through the first Better Business Bureau complaint, which I was, of course, upfront, provided the documentation, I offered to solve it for her. I said, "Look, I don't need to get into a dispute over $400. And I tried to offer a settlement of half, but because I knew we were in the right, and this was really, really stupid of me, I couldn't let it go. I had to see this through because I felt like she was doing something that wasn't right to us. Then she attempted to sue us, and then just to make it even more painful, she didn't want to speak to me unless I had an attorney because she knew that would start costing me money. So then she actually started sending me fake attorneys' letters that would she would when you get served, it comes certified mail, signature required. She was mailing these things from phony law firms just to kind of terrorize me. And congratulations, like, it worked because it's really terrible to get that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we had stuff like that. I had
Out of curiosity, what was the rent on that per month?
It was $1,300.
Yikes. But see, This is exactly, I'm glad we talked about this, but this is a reality check to this kind of business.
Oh yeah.
It's not always like, "Hey, how are you? Come move in." "Okay, how's everything going?" "Good." It's not always like that.
Yep. I mean, we recently had During January, the January 6th thing, we had a house of renters that was next to an Airbnb, and the Airbnb rented to like the Proud Boys, and there was an altercation that ensued between the two of them. Not physical, but like screaming at each other, people getting attorneys involved. And I'm in the middle of it because I manage the house next door. The owner of the property, who is a legend for being a jerk, right? Really a truly jerk. He was telling me to manage my tenants. And I'm like, you want me to manage my tenants' political beliefs as they're encountering somebody who's in your property? So I'm in the business of managing the home. I'm not in the business of managing the tenants and what they're yelling about, Trump or whatever. Like that's not me.
It is bizarre.
But he just got more and more infuriated that I wasn't stepping in. And then his dad was an attorney, and he threatened to have his dad call me, and I talked to his dad. I mean, so all this.
I'm going to call my dad.
Literally.
Fourth grade. You're going to the principal's office.
Yeah, he's like, my dad's a big time attorney.
You're like, cool.
Oddly enough, I talked to the dad. Dad's actually a sweetheart. He's the only rational person here. Now, I'm doing this in the backdrop of I'm with my wife in Colombia for the first time, and I'm dealing with this on the phone, and she's just like looking at me like you're the dumbest business person I know.
Yeah.
Why are you doing this? Why are you torturing? I'm like, it's not right. I've got this like inflated sense of right and wrong, and I'm like, I got to set this right. And she's like, I don't know what you're
looks
doing.
like a
Is this
failure
what she
to
said?
me.
Let me pull out my checkbook and like, how much does this cost?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. But I mean, it's just, it's crazy. Overall, is it worth it? Yes. Do I have these like anecdote stories that are just like, a little bit crazy, and it makes it really entertaining to sit next to me at a dinner party? Yeah. But then I also have the tenants and the clients that are like friends, and like, I see them and they hug me and they're like, thank you so much. And you helped me in this time that was really tough. So it's very rewarding to me from that standpoint. Overall it's monetarily rewarding, but
That's exciting.
there are highs and lows there.
Congratulations on it.
Yeah. That's good to wrap with. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's go to some rapid fire.
Rapid fire. We did this last time. Whatever pops to your mind first. Last live concert.
That was probably 5 years ago when I saw Tycho.
Tycho.
You haven't been to a concert in 5 years?
At least, yeah.
Wow, okay.
They called me yesterday for Beyonce.
Say it again?
They called me yesterday for Beyonce. We're on the list for a suite.
Yeah, you guys are big time. Yeah, I think so. Last time I did go to Tycho, my requirement was that I bought a box. It was a Sunday night show. I bought a table, right? The whole venue, I was the only guy that bought a table.
Oh my God.
because
Tycho, what is Tycho?
they're like electronic music.
Okay.
They were in what's the one off Northeast?
Oh yeah, Shaq played there.
It's like it's the electronic music venue. I'm blanking on the name. Echo Stage.
Echo Stage, right?
Stage.
There you go.
Yeah, Shaquille O'Neal played there like about a month ago.
Shaquille O'Neal played what there?
He's
DJ,
a DJ,
right?
He's a DJ.
Yeah.
He's a DJ.
It's like
what?
Yeah, well, okay.
He's a
The
DJ.
next question.
With
He's
the
a
giant
DJ
beat
now.
books on the records. Like, how is that possible?
What Seinfeld character are you?
I think I'm Jerry.
Jerry?
Yeah.
I can see that. You get one dessert for the rest of your life. What is it?
It's a cookie. It's got to be a cookie.
What kind of cookie?
Something crunchy.
Like chocolate chip, oatmeal?
I don't think it really matters. It's
Just
really
a
just a
cookie.
mechanism to deliver sugar to your body.
You just got called into Top Gun. What's your call sign?
Mr. Nice Guy. I don't know.
Mr. Nice Guy. And I got to follow it up with Tom Hanks or Tom Cruise. Who you having coffee with?
Tom Hanks. He seems like fun. Tom Cruise doesn't seem like fun. You don't think
He's pretty intense though.
I don't think you'd get a real.
What would you get out of that
conversation
conversation?
Yeah. Like I'd rather have it somebing somebody would actually talk to me about something he could relate to or have a conversation.
Well, I know Tom Cruise listens to this podcast, so he's going to be very upset with it. All right. Was that it?
Yep, that's rapid fire.
I've got free word association. So we don't do this with every guest, but today, here's your psychology test of the day. So I'm going to say a word, and then you say a word back. Don't be scared.
Okay.
Childhood.
Fun.
Building.
A business.
Family.
My parents.
City.
DC.
Dining.
Fine.
Fashion.
Monochromatic.
Art.
Passion.
That's all I got.
That's very good. Andrew, thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys so
Thanks
much for
coming
having
back,
me.
man.
I really appreciate it.
Charity?
Yeah. So again, we give a charity donation to a charity of your choice. Is there someone you want to give a shout out to today?
Can I give a repeat?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I just did the Ross Elementary School in Logan Circle. We did their event this weekend. So
This past weekend.
yeah, happy to do that again.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thanks for listening to Keyed In with your hosts, Max and Brent, unlocking the minds of the industry's top real estate professionals. For more information on selling your home, find us online at keyedinpodcast.com. Remember to subscribe to Keyed In on Apple Podcasts or wherever you like to listen to podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at Keyed In Podcast, at Rabin Max, and at Brent E. Jackson. And follow Max on TikTok at MaxwellRabin_properties.